Taiwan nodded. Yes, that is exactly what we are saying. But love is just a chemical reaction, the crystal being said. It is a biological process that happens between members of the same species. You cannot give love to a stranger. You cannot give it to someone from a different world. Humans can, Yuna said simply. We've been doing it for thousands of years. We adopt children who are not our own. We care for animals that cannot care for us back. We form bonds with strangers and treat them like family. She smiled softly. It is not logical. It does not make scientific sense. But it works. The room was silent for a long moment. Finally, no one spoke. I have known humans for many years. I have always thought of them as strange, stubborn creatures. They refuse to die when they should. They fight battles they cannot win. They show kindness when kindness gains them nothing. The old Valari stood up slowly. Perhaps this is why. Perhaps their greatest strength is not in their bodies, but in their hearts. Novan looked around the table. I vote to approve Dr. Park's request. One by one, the other council members raised their hands. Some still looked doubtful. But in the end, the vote was unanimous. Taiwan let out a breath he did not know he was holding. The next morning, he arrived at Lyra's room with a bag full of supplies. He had soft blankets in 3 different colors. He had a small stuffed animal that looked like a rabbit from Earth. He had a stack of picture books that he had translated into Galactic Common the night before. And he had a tiny music player loaded with gentle piano songs. Lyra was still in her corner. She had not moved since the last time he saw her. Taiwan did not speak to her. He did not approach her. He simply sat down on the floor about 2 meters away from her and opened one of the picture books. Once upon a time, he began reading in a soft voice. There was a little star who lived at the edge of the galaxy. Lyra did not react. Her empty eyes stared at the wall. Taiwan kept reading. The little star was very lonely. She watched the other stars dancing together, making beautiful patterns in the sky. But she was too far away to join them. Still nothing. Taiwan finished the story. Then he closed the book, stood up quietly, and left the room. He came back the next day. And the day after that. Each time, he sat in the same spot. Each time, he read the same story. Each time, Lyra showed no response at all. On the 4th day, Taiwan brought the stuffed rabbit. He placed it on the floor, halfway between himself and Lyra. Then he sat down and started reading. Once upon a time, there was a little star who lived at the edge of the galaxy. Lyra's eyes moved. It was small. Just a tiny flicker. But for the first time in almost 4 weeks, she looked at something. She looked at the rabbit. Taiwan's heart jumped in his chest. But he kept his voice calm and steady. He finished the story, closed the book, and stood up to leave. The rabbit stayed on the floor. I will come back tomorrow, Taiwan said softly. I promise. He walked out of the room and closed the door behind him. In the hallway, Yuna was waiting. She had been watching through the window. Did you see that? Taiwan asked. His hands were shaking slightly. Yuna nodded. She looked at the rabbit. That is the first voluntary movement she has made since she arrived. It is working. Taiwan leaned against the wall and closed his eyes. Slowly, but it is working. It will take time, Yuna reminded him. Days, weeks, maybe months. You cannot rush this kind of healing. I know. Taiwan opened his eyes and looked at his colleague. But she looked at the rabbit. Yuna. For 1 second, she was curious about something. For 1 second, she was alive. He smiled for the first time in days. That is where it starts. That is always where it starts. 2 weeks passed on Harmony's rest. The ships kept coming with more refugees. The hallways stayed crowded. The doctors stayed busy. But every day, without fail, Taiwan made time for his visits to room 47. The changes were small. So small that most people would not notice them at all. But Taiwan noticed everything. On the 8th day, Lyra looked at him when he entered the room. Just for a second. Her large silver eyes moved from the wall to his face, then back to the wall. But she had seen him. She had acknowledged that he existed. On the 11th day, she pulled the blanket around her shoulders. Taiwan had left it near her corner, not touching her, just close enough for her to reach. He came back the next morning and found her wrapped in it, the soft blue fabric covering her thin body. On the 14th day, Taiwan walked into the room and stopped. His breath caught in his throat. The stuffed rabbit was in her arms. Lyra was still sitting in the corner. She was still silent, but her forearms were wrapped around the small fabric rabbit, holding it against her chest like it was the most precious thing in the universe. Taiwan sat down in his usual spot and opened his book. His voice trembled slightly as he began to read. Once upon a time, there was a little star who lived at the edge of the galaxy. For the first time, Lyra watched him while he read. Her eyes followed his lips, his hands, the pages of the book. She did not speak. She did not move closer. But she was watching Dot. She was present. Taiwan told Yuna about it that night over dinner. The psychologist smiled and nodded. "She is starting to trust you," Yuna said. "She is letting herself believe that you will keep coming back, that you will not abandon her like everyone else did. I would never abandon her. I know that. And soon, she will know it too." The next day, Taiwan brought help. Do-Yoon Kang was a young medical assistant from Korea. He was 25 years old, with a round face and a gentle smile. He had worked with Taiwan for 2 years, and Taiwan trusted him completely. "Just sit with me," Taiwan told him outside Lyra's door. "Do not try to talk to her. Do not look at her directly. Just be there." Do-Hyun nodded. "What should I do?" Taiwan handed him a small wooden puzzle. It was a simple toy from Earth, meant for children. The pieces clicked together to form a picture of a mountain and a river. "Play with this," Taiwan said. "Let her see you enjoying something. Let her see that simple things can make people happy." They entered the room together. Lyra's ears twitched at the sight of a new person, but she did not run. She stayed in her corner, clutching the rabbit, watching them with careful eyes. Taiwan sat down and began reading. Beside him, Do-Hyun sat cross-legged on the floor and started working on the puzzle. He made soft sounds when the pieces fit together. Little hums of satisfaction. Small words of praise to himself. "Oh, nice. This piece goes here. And this one. Yes, that is perfect." Lyra watched him dot day after day. The pattern continued. Taiwan would read. Do-Hyun would play with the puzzle. Sometimes he would take it apart and start over, just so Lyra could watch him solve it again. On the 18th day, something amazing happened. Do-Hyun was working on the puzzle when he noticed movement in the corner of his eye. Lyra's hand was twitching. One of her forearms was reaching out, very slowly, toward the puzzle pieces scattered on the floor. Do-Hyun kept his eyes on his own hands. He did not look at her. He did not want to scare her. But inside, his heart was beating like a drum. Lyra's hand stopped halfway. It hung in the air for a long moment. Then it pulled back to her chest. "It is okay," Do-Hyun said softly, still not looking at her. "The puzzle is not going anywhere. It will be here whenever you are ready." He continued playing as if nothing had happened. On the 20th day, Lyra picked up a piece. She reached out while Do-Hyun was looking at his hands, grabbed one small wooden piece, and pulled it back to her corner. She turned it over and over in her fingers, studying it like it held the secrets of the universe. Taiwan kept reading. His voice did not change, but his eyes were wet. On the 23rd day, Lyra did something no one expected. She placed the piece in the puzzle. Do-Hyun had left the half-finished puzzle on the floor. just within her reach. Lyra crawled forward slowly, so slowly with the rabbit still clutched in one arm. She studied the puzzle for a long moment. Then, with careful fingers, she placed her piece in the correct spot. It clicked. Lyra looked up at Du-Hai and Dot. It was the first time she had made eye contact with anyone since her mother died. Da-Yun smiled gently. He did not laugh or cheer or make any loud noise. He simply looked at her and said one word. Good. Lyra's ears trembled. In Valari culture, trembling ears meant strong emotion. It meant that something had touched the heart. She looked back down at the puzzle. Then she picked up another piece. Elder Novan watched the recording that night. The old Valari played it over and over again, pausing at the moment when Lyra made eye contact with Do-Yun. I do not understand, Novan said to Yuna. She did nothing for weeks. We tried everything. And then two humans sit with her, read stories, play with toys. And suddenly she responds. Yuna nodded. That is how it works. But why? What is different about what you are doing? Yuna thought about how to explain it. She knew that most aliens did not understand human psychology. It was not their fault. Their brains were simply built differently. When a child is hurt, she said finally, they close themselves off from the world. They build walls around their heart to protect themselves from more pain. Medicine cannot break those walls. Machines cannot break those walls. Only trust can. Trust. Yes, Lyra needed to believe that someone cared about her. Not because they wanted something from her. Not because it was their job. But simply because she mattered. Yuna paused. Dr. Park came to her room every single day. He asked nothing of her. He expected nothing. He just showed up, read stories, and left. Day after day after day. Novan's old eyes were thoughtful. He was proving himself to her. Yes, he was showing her that she could count on him. That he would not disappear. That he would not leave her alone. Yuna smiled. And once she believed that, she was ready to start trusting again. Ready to start living again. Novan looked at the screen, where the recording showed Lyra placing another piece in the puzzle. Your species is very strange, Dr. Choi. I know. You heal with patience. You heal with presence. You heal with something that cannot be measured or weighed or put into a machine. Yuna nodded. We call it love, Elder Novan. And sometimes, love is the only medicine that works. Day 30 arrived like any other day on the station. Ships came and went. Refugees filled the hallways. The universe continued spinning through the cold darkness of space. But in room 47, something extraordinary was about to happen. Taiwan settled into his usual spot on the floor. The room looked different now than it had a month ago. There were soft blankets arranged in a little nest in the corner. The stuffed rabbit sat beside a growing collection of puzzle pieces and small toys. Drawings covered one wall, simple pictures that Do-Yun had made during his visits. Stars and planets and flowers and animals. Lyra was sitting closer today. Not in the corner anymore, but about a meter away from Taiwan. She still held the rabbit, but her eyes were bright and alert. She watched him with something that almost looked like anticipation. Taiwan opened a new book. It was a story he had been saving for the right moment. This is a special story, he said softly. It is about a star who lost her family. But she finds something new, something even more precious. Lyra's ears perked forward. She was listening. Taiwan began to read. Once upon a time, there was a small star named Nova. She lived with her mother at the edge of a beautiful nebula. They danced together every night, making patterns in the cosmic dust. Lyra hugged the rabbit tighter. But one day, a terrible storm came through the nebula. The winds were too strong. The dust was too thick. And when the storm passed, Nova's mother was gone. She had been swept away to a place that Nova could not follow. Taiwan paused. He glanced at Lyra. Her eyes were wet. She understood. Nova was alone. She floated through the darkness, too sad to shine. She forgot how to glow. She forgot how to dance. She thought that without her mother, she would fade away forever. A tear rolled down Lyra's silver fur. But then something strange happened. Nova drifted close to a constellation she had never seen before. The stars there were different colors, different sizes. They moved in patterns that Nova did not recognize. She was afraid of them. Taiwan's voice grew softer. But the strange stars did not hurt her. Instead, they gathered around her. They shared their light with her. They taught her new dances. They showed her that even though she had lost her mother, she did not have to be alone. He turned the page to show a beautiful illustration of a small star surrounded by a constellation of different colored stars. Nova did not forget her mother. She never stopped missing her. But she learned that her heart was big enough to hold both the sadness and the new happiness. She learned that love does not run out. The more you give, the more you have. Taiwan closed the book gently, and Nova shone brighter than ever before. Not because she forgot her pain, but because she found new stars who helped carry it with her. The room was silent. Then Lyra made a sound. It was soft, almost too quiet to hear. But in the silence of the room, it was as loud as thunder. Again, Taiwan's heart stopped. In the corner of the room, Yuna pressed her hand over her mouth. Her eyes were full of tears. Taiwan swallowed hard. He kept his voice calm, even though his whole body was shaking. "You want me to read it again?" Lyra nodded. It was small, just a tiny movement of her head. But it was the first time she had communicated with anyone since her mother died. Taiwan opened the book and started from the beginning. He read the story 3 more times. Each time, Lyra moved a little closer. By the end, she was only an arm's length away from him. The distance between them had shrunk from 2 meters to less than half a meter. When he finished the 4th reading, Lyra spoke again. "Why do you come?" Her voice was rough and scratchy from weeks of silence. But it was the most beautiful sound Taiwan had ever heard. He thought carefully about his answer. He knew that the Valari valued honesty above everything else. They could sense lies. They could feel when someone was not being truthful. "Because you are hurting," he said simply. "And where I come from, we do not let children hurt alone." Lyra stared at him. Her large silver eyes searched his face. "But I am not your cub." "No, you are not." "Then why do you care?" Taiwan smiled sadly. "Because you are still a child. And that is enough. That is all the reason I need." Lyra was quiet for a long moment. She seemed to be processing his words, trying to understand them. "My mother said she would always come back," Lyra whispered. "She promised. She said she would never leave me." Taiwan felt his heart breaking. "I know," he said softly. "I am so sorry she could not keep that promise. It was not her fault. And it was not your fault either. Then whose fault was it? Sometimes bad things happen for no reason. Sometimes the universe is cruel and unfair. Sometimes we lose the people we love, and there is no one to blame." Taiwan's voice cracked slightly. "But that does not mean you are alone. It does not mean you have to carry the pain by yourself." Lyra's eyes filled with tears. Real tears. The first she had shed since that terrible day on the transport ship. "I miss her," she whispered. "I miss her so much. I know. It hurts. I know." The tears began to fall. Lyra cried softly at first, then harder. The sobs shook her small body. Weeks of grief and pain and loneliness came pouring out of her like water from a broken dam. Taiwan did not rush to hold her. He did not force comfort on her. He simply opened his arms and waited. Lyra looked at him through her tears. She looked at this strange human who had sat with her every day, who had read her stories, who had asked nothing from her, who had simply been there, patient and constant. Like the stars in the sky, she crawled into his arms. Taiwan wrapped a blanket around them both. He held her gently, carefully, letting her cry against his chest. He did not tell her to stop. He did not tell her everything would be okay. He just held her. They stayed like that for 3 hours. When Lyra finally fell asleep, exhausted from crying, Taiwan carried her to the small bed in the corner. He tucked the blanket around her and placed the rabbit in her arms. Then he sat down beside her and stayed until morning. Yun found them there when she came to check on them. Taiwan was asleep with his back against the wall, dark circles under his eyes. Lyra was curled up on the bed, one of her 4 hands reaching out to touch his arm. Even in sleep, she did not want to let him go. Yuna quietly backed out of the room and closed the door. In her report that night, she wrote a single line: "The patient has begun to heal." 8 weeks after Taiwan first walked into room 47, Lyra walked out. She moved slowly, holding Doyun's hand with one arm and clutching the stuffed rabbit with another. Her silver fur was clean and brushed. Her large eyes were bright and alert, moving around the hallway with wonder and a little bit of fear. Taiwan walked beside her. He did not rush her. He did not pull her forward. He simply matched her pace, letting her explore at her own speed. Other refugees stopped to stare. They had heard stories about the silent cub in room 47, the one who had shut down completely, the one who would not eat, speak, or move. Now here she was, walking through the hallway like any normal child. A small Valari boy ran up to Lyra. He was about her age, with curious eyes and ears that twitched with excitement. "Do you want to play?" he asked. Lyra looked at Taiwan. He smiled and nodded gently. She turned back to the boy. "Yes," she said quietly. "I want to play." And she let go of Doyun's hand and followed the boy to a corner where other children were gathered. Taiwan watched her go. His eyes were wet, but he was smiling. That night, the Galactic Union sent a formal request to the station. They wanted a complete report on the treatment methods used for the Valari cub named Lyra. Word had spread about her recovery. Doctors and scientists across 100 worlds wanted to know how the humans had done it. Taiwan and Yuna worked together on the report. It took them 2 weeks to write it. When they finished, it was one of the most detailed medical documents ever created about human psychology. They called it Human Psychological Intervention Methods, a framework for emotional healing across species. But the real meaning was much simpler. They called it How Humans Love. The report explained attachment theory. It explained play therapy and grief counseling. It explained the importance of consistency, patience, and unconditional positive regard. It used scientific language and technical terms that would satisfy the curious minds of alien researchers, but the conclusion was written in simple words that anyone could understand. Humans evolved on a death world, the report stated. We were surrounded by predators, disasters, and constant loss from the first moment of our existence. We were not the fastest or the strongest or the most intelligent creatures on our planet. We should have died out long before we learned to make fire or build tools. But we survived. We survived because we developed something that no other species on our world possessed. We developed the ability to care for each other, to protect the weak, to comfort the grieving, to raise children who were not our own. Other species call this instinct useless. They see it as a waste of resources. Why help someone who cannot help you back? Why care for a stranger? Why spend energy on the broken and the lost? Humans do not ask these questions. We simply help. We simply care. We simply love. This love cannot be synthesized in a laboratory. It cannot be programmed into a machine. It cannot be prescribed in measured doses. It can only be given freely, from one heart to another. This is human medicine. This is our greatest gift. And we give it to anyone who needs it, regardless of species, regardless of planet, regardless of whether they can ever give anything back. Because that is what humans do. We find the broken things, and we stay until they are whole again. The reports spread across the galaxy like fire. Within a month, it had been translated into 300 languages. Medical schools on distant worlds added it to their required reading. Philosophers debated its implications. Leaders discussed what it meant for the future of galactic cooperation. But on Harmony's rest, life continued as normal. Lyra was not healed. Taiwan and Yuna had explained this to the station council many times. Grief does not disappear. Trauma leaves scars that last forever. But healing is not the same as forgetting. Healing is learning to live with the pain. Learning to carry it. Learning to find joy again despite the weight. And Lyra was healing. She ate regular meals now. She played with other children. She laughed at jokes and cried at sad stories. She went to the station school and made friends. And every evening, without fail, she found Taiwan for their reading session. Elder Novan visited him one afternoon, 6 months after the treatment began. The old Valari walked slowly, their white fur thin and fading. But their eyes were sharp and thoughtful. "I have studied your species for 40 cycles," Novan said. "I thought I understood humans. Your aggression, your stubbornness, your impossible survival instincts." The elder paused, watching Lyra chase Doyun around the common area. "I did not know you could be this." "This?" Taiwan asked. "Gentle, patient, kind without reason." Novan shook their heads slowly. "We have words for human warriors, human inventors, human explorers, but we had no word for humans who heal." "We are all of those things," Taiwan said. "Sometimes in the same person, sometimes on the same day. That is what makes you strange." Novan turned to look at him directly. "And that is what makes you wonderful." A few weeks later, a Valari family came to the station. They had lost their own cubs in the war, and they had heard about the orphan who needed a home. They spent 3 days with Lyra, getting to know her, letting her get to know them. On the 4th day, they asked to adopt her. Lyra looked at Taiwan when she heard the news. Her eyes were uncertain, afraid. "Will you forget me?" she asked. Taiwan knelt down in front of her. He took her small hand in his. "Never," he said. "Not in a million years. Not in a billion. You are part of my heart now, Lyra, and you always will be. But you will be so far away. Distance does not matter. Not to humans. We carry the people we love with us wherever we go." He touched his chest. "You will be right here, always." Lyra threw her arms around him and hugged him tight. All 4 of her arms wrapped around his neck, holding on like she never wanted to let go. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you for staying." Taiwan closed his eyes and held her back. "That is what humans do, little star. We stay." The day Lyra left the station, she carried 3 things with her. The first was the stuffed rabbit, now worn and faded from months of being held. The second was a collection of picture books that Taiwan had translated into Valari for her. The third was a photograph. It showed Lyra standing between Taiwan, Yuna, and Doyun. All 4 of them were smiling. Behind them, the stars of the galaxy glittered like diamonds. On the back of the photograph, in careful handwriting, was a message. To Lyra, "You are not lost. You are not alone. You are loved. From your human family." As her ship flew away into the stars, Lyra pressed the photograph against her heart. She looked out the window at the station growing smaller and smaller. Somewhere on that station, 3 humans were watching her go. She could not see them, but she knew they were there. She could feel it. Years later, historians would write about the day that changed how the galaxy thought about humans. They would analyze the medical report. They would study the case of the Valari cub who was saved by love. But the most important change was a small one. So small that most people did not notice it at all. The Valari language had an old word for humans. It translated roughly to strange, persistent predators. It was not a kind word. It was a word of fear and confusion. But after Lyra's story spread across the Union, a new translation emerged. The new word was simpler, shorter, easier to say. It meant those who stay. And for the Valari, and for all the species who heard the story of the little cub and her human family, it became the only word for humans that mattered. Those who stay, those who care, those who love humans. The space station called Harmony's Rest floated in the darkness between stars. It was a place for refugees. Thousands of aliens came here to escape the war that burned across their home worlds. Ships arrived every day, carrying families with nothing left but the clothes on their backs and the fear in their hearts. Dr. Taiwan Park walked through the crowded hallways of the medical wing. He was a human, one of only 12 humans on the entire station. The others were all aliens of different species. Some had 4 arms. Some had scales. Some had no eyes at all. Taiwan had learned to work with all of them during his 3 years here. Today, something felt wrong. He stopped outside room 47 and looked through the small window. Inside, he saw a Valari cub sitting in the corner. The Valari were tall beings covered in soft silver fur. They had 4 arms and large eyes that could show every emotion they felt. This cub was small, maybe 7 years old by human standards. Her name was Lyra. Taiwan had seen her file. 3 weeks ago, her mother died during the evacuation of their planet. A bomb hit their transport ship. Lyra survived. Her mother did not. Since that day, Lyra had not spoken a single word. She did not eat unless the nurses forced nutrients into her body through a tube. She did not move from her corner. She just sat there, staring at nothing, like a machine that someone had turned off. Taiwan opened the door and stepped inside. Lyra did not look at him. She did not move at all. Her 4 arms were wrapped around her knees, and her large eyes were empty. "Hello, Lyra," Taiwan said softly. "My name is Taiwan. I am a doctor here." Nothing. Not even a twitch of her ears. Taiwan sat down on the floor, keeping his distance. He did not want to scare her. He just watched her for a long moment, feeling his heart grow heavy in his chest. He had seen many things in his years as a xenobiologist. He had treated broken bones and strange diseases. He had helped aliens give birth and watched others die. But something about this silent little cub broke him in a way he could not explain. After 10 minutes, he stood up and left. In the hallway, he found Elder Novan waiting for him. Novan was an old Valari, one of the senior physicians on the station. Their fur had turned white with age, and they walked with slow, careful steps. "You have seen the cub," Novan said. It was not a question. Taiwan nodded. "How long has she been like this?" 23 days. "We have tried everything." Novan's voice was tired. Nutrient therapy, pheromone treatments, neural stimulation. Nothing works. Her body is alive, but her mind is gone. "What do your people call this condition?" Novan was silent for a moment. "We do not have a name for it. Valari cubs do not behave this way. When we lose family members, we bond with others. We adapt. We survive. It is how our species has always been." The old physician looked through the window at Lyra. But this cub was raised in isolation because of the war. She had only her mother. No extended family. No community. When her mother died, she lost everything. Taiwan understood now. Lyra was not just sad. She was experiencing something much deeper. Something that the Valari had never seen before because their society protected them from it. "I know what is wrong with her," Taiwan said. Novan turned to look at him with surprise. "You do?" "Yes. Humans have a name for this. We call it depression. Severe childhood depression, combined with grief trauma." Taiwan paused. "Her spirit is broken, Elder. Her mind has decided that living is too painful, so it is trying to shut down." The old Valari stared at him. "You speak of the mind as if it is separate from the body. In some ways, it is. The body can be healthy while the mind is sick. And the mind can be sick even when there is nothing wrong with the body." Taiwan looked back at Lyra. "Your medicine treats the body, but Lyra's body is not the problem. Then, what do you suggest, human?" "We have no treatment for a broken spirit." Taiwan was quiet for a long time. He thought about his own childhood. He thought about the dark days after his grandmother died, when he was only 8 years old. He remembered how he had felt like the world was ending. He remembered the emptiness that ate at him from the inside. But he also remembered what saved him. "Let me try something," he said finally. "It will not be like any medicine you have seen before. It will take time. Weeks, maybe months. And I cannot promise it will work." "What kind of medicine?" Novan asked. Taiwan turned to face the elder. "Human medicine." Novan tilted their head in confusion. "I do not understand. Humans and Valari have completely different biology. Your drugs will not work on her body." "I am not talking about drugs." Taiwan took a deep breath. "I am talking about something else. Something my species developed over thousands of years of evolution. Something we use to heal wounds that cannot be seen." "You speak in riddles, Dr. Park." "Maybe, but I need you to trust me." Taiwan's voice was firm but gentle. "I have seen this condition before. I have lived through it myself. And I know that there is only one cure." Novan studied him for a long moment. The old Valari had worked with humans before. They knew that humans were strange creatures. They were soft and weak compared to most species, yet they survived on one of the most dangerous planets in the galaxy. They were aggressive and stubborn, yet they also showed kindness to strangers for no reason at all. Perhaps, Novan thought, this human knew something that the Valari did not. "Very well," Novan said at last. "I will bring your request to the medical council. What do you need?" Taiwan had already made his list in his head. "Soft blankets. A stuffed animal, something she can hold. Picture books with simple stories. A music player with calm sounds." He paused. "And permission to spend 4 hours every day in her room." Novan blinked. "That is all? No machines? No injections? No neural implants?" "No, just those things. And time." The elders shook their heads slowly. "I do not understand how blankets and stories can heal a broken mind." Taiwan smiled sadly. "Neither did my species for a very long time. We had to learn the hard way." He looked through the window at Lyra one more time. "But we did learn. And now it is my turn to teach." He walked away, leaving Novan standing alone in the hallway. The old Valari looked through the window at the small cub in the corner. Lyra had not moved. She had not shown any sign of life. But somewhere in the back of Novan's mind, a tiny spark of hope began to glow. Maybe, just maybe, the human knew something after all. The medical council met in the large meeting room on the top floor of the station. 12 physicians from different species sat around a curved table. At the center stood Taiwan, feeling very small under their curious eyes. Elder Novan had presented his request. Now everyone was looking at him like he had lost his mind. "Let me understand this correctly," said a tall insect-like being named Crix. "You want to treat a dying child with blankets and bedtime stories?" "Not just that," Taiwan said calmly. But yes, those are part of it. This is absurd, said another council member, a being made of living crystal. The cub needs real medicine. Proper treatment. Not human superstition. Taiwan kept his voice steady. With respect, your proper treatment has not worked. Nothing you have tried in the past 3 weeks has made any difference. Lyra is still dying. The room went quiet. The human has a point, Novan said slowly. We have used every tool available to us. Perhaps it is time to try something new. Something new is one thing, Crick said. Something foolish is another. How can sitting in a room with a child possibly heal her? Taiwan opened his mouth to answer, but another voice spoke first. Because humans understand something we do not. Everyone turned to look at the speaker. It was Dr. Yuna Choi, the station's other human doctor. She was a psychologist who specialized in treating mental illness. She had been quiet until now, watching from the corner of the room. Yuna stepped forward. I have studied human psychology for 20 years, and I have spent the last 5 years learning how other species deal with mental health. Do you know what I found? No one answered. Most species in the galaxy do not have words for depression. They do not understand anxiety or trauma or grief. When their people show these symptoms, they treat it as a physical disease. They use drugs and machines and surgery. Yuna shook her head. But humans are different. We evolved on a world where death was everywhere. Our children were weak. Our elders were slow. We lost family members to predators, to diseases, to wars. And we had to find a way to survive that pain. She walked to the center of the room and stood beside Taiwan. So we developed something that no other species has. We call it psychology, the study of the mind, the science of healing invisible wounds. Yuna looked around the room. Dr. Park is not asking to use superstition. He is asking to use one of the most powerful tools in human medicine. It is called attachment therapy. Attachment therapy? Novan repeated the words carefully. Yes, it is based on a simple idea. When a child is hurt, they need more than medicine for their body. They need to feel safe. They need to know that someone cares about them. They need a connection to another living being. Yuna paused. Lyra lost her mother. She lost the one person who made her feel safe in the universe. And until someone fills that empty space, no amount of drugs will help her. The council members looked at each other with uncertainty. You are saying, Crick said slowly, that the cure for this child is love?